I think you're on mute, Wiwid.
Well, all right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending the PICA webinar, evaluating the implementation of the Freedom of Learning and Independent Campus program, gaining perspective from the international higher education expert. Terima kasih, selamat datang Bapak Ibu dalam acara webinar PICA dengan tema yang sudah disampaikan tadi. Terima kasih juga sudah berkenan menunggu selama kurang lebih 10 menit sehingga kita bisa bersama-sama belajar banyak dari Profesor Jamin dan Profesor Yoshitaka. Mohon izin menyampaikan materi hari ini dan semua pengantar dalam bahasa Inggris, dan kami yakin Bapak Ibu sudah nyaman dengan bahasa ini, dan nanti Bapak Ibu kami minta untuk mengisi registrasi terkait dengan sertifikat jika memang Bapak Ibu menginginkan untuk mendapatkan sertifikat pada hari ini. Baik. All right. Well, thank you so much for Professor Jamin Field and also Professor Yoshitaka Uchida and also Professor Irwan Indrayanto who are already here and also already prepare many information that we need to know to evaluate our new program for Ministry of Education about the freedom of learning and independent campus. Like this morning, this webinar will be led by Professor Irwan Indrayanto, who will provide the glimpse of what is the freedom of learning and independent campuses. And prior there, I would like to read the CV of Professor Jamin and also Professor Yoshitaka. Professor Jamin has extensive contribution in the teaching, involves the development and implementation of courses at University of Sydney. He currently coordinates 4 undergraduate and postgraduate courses and teaches into several others, which contribute to agriculture and science undergraduate degree and master degree, also in agriculture and environment, as well as the cross-faculty master in sustainability. So I think this is the important point. Like he also managed the interdisciplinary master program. He has called the development of 5-degree stream in Faculty of Science, and this curriculum development have been recognized by his college, who also receiving the Vice Chancellor Award for Teaching Development and the nationally developed Good Practice Guide Threshold Learning Outcome for Agriculture. And also his development in cross-disciplinary field school teaching, particularly in Southeast Asia, have been adopted as the model used for interdisciplinary field school hosted by Sydney Southeast Asia Center of SSEAC or SEAC. His curriculum models developed for soil education support. The National Committee focus on advancing soil science education across Australia and acknowledged internationally. And he has been also supported by a number of small and large teaching grants, including Australian Learning and Teaching Council funding toward a national curriculum. So for Bapak and Ibu who want to know how to get the funding to develop the curriculum, Professor Jamin is the right person to gain the knowledge of. And the soil education research that been developed by the team and also Professor Jamin has resulted in collaboration with 5 Australian leading universities and also subsequent collaboration with Texas A&M in USA and University in Cambodia, Laos, and Indonesia. Well, currently he is appointed as the professor in global soil security and soil education, as well as the executive committee for the Sydney Southeast Asia Center. And also, he also the advisor of the postgraduate training. He is the chair of Division 4 for the role of Soil and Sustaining Society in IUSS, Division Chair of Teaching Curriculum Working Party, and also Australian Soil Network, and Deputy Chair of Australian Examination and Procedure Committee. So this is the last one, the Australian Examination and Procedure Committee. I think that's the key of his expertise in higher education management. So yeah, there's a long CV showing how expertise of him that will deliver a great talk today to evaluate the program from the Ministry of Education. And also we have Professor Yoshitaka today from Hokkaido University. He has been managed many programs including the summer school program in various parts in New Zealand, between Hokkaido and University and New Zealand, and helping Japanese students to have collaborative project also with some university in New Zealand. And he also involved in the Nitobe School, the unique multidisciplinary course taught in English and cross-departmental educational program that encourage students to develop deep sense of humanity and international sensibility. He also involved from planning stage of the school and established part of the curriculum, mainly focusing on ethic learning. He currently being appointed as the associate professor at Graduate School of Global Food Resources. And the school is one of the first English-only graduate school within Hokkaido University. And the school aims to recruit students who wish to learn food resource-related global issues in English. The professor from various background, from economic and macro science, also help the student to achieve their goals. So I believe the experience of Professor Yoshitaka in managing summer school program and how to transfer the credit from the various program, multidisciplinary program, to the curriculum within the Hokkaido University program will give us like beneficiary in knowledge how to elaborate with the new program from our Ministry of Education, Bapak Nadiem Makarim. So, well, without further ado, Pak Irwan. Pak Irwan, I forgot to I mentioned Pak Irwan. Pak Irwan is the head of academic studies in UGM. Well, he has a lot of experience in developing the freedom learning on independent campus, especially in UGM and also in the national level. Well, actually, this webinar will be opened by the head of PICA, but because he's still in the middle of the important meeting related to freedom learning, also independent campus with the Ministry of Education, so he will provide a remark maybe at the end of this webinar. So, Professor Irwan, time is yours now to lead the webinar today. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Bu Wiwit. Can you hear my voice clearly or?
Yes, it's very well audible.
Okay. I'm using two devices in case of any problems. So, ladies and gentlemen, Professor Damian Field and Professor Yustaka, good to have you here. I would like to share first several concepts of MBKM to put the framework of our discussion today. Actually, today we want to learn, as Buiwit said, what about the implementation of similar schemes in your university. So first, let me explain a little bit about the MBKM, freedom of learning. So, and also independent campus program. So that's what we call MBKM. So I will refer to MBKM. It's a kind of ideas from the government that let the students choose what they want to learn outside the campus and maybe also outside the university. So my name is Irwan Indrayanto. So some of the slides will be also in Indonesian to let all the other participants to know the framework. But I hope I can also explain it in English so you might know also several ideas and also several problems that you might also see. So the goals of MBKM, so the Freedom of Learning Independent Campus, is to achieve a kind of a graduate learning outcomes with additional competence. Here I emphasize additional competence because that might happen that the competence that also proposed by the study programs, it doesn't match the additional competence that the students want to have. This one kind of problems that the students might have or want to have a soft skill and hard skill that might need in the relevant in the next job that they want to enter. And also the second part is to have the internalization of the provision attitude and work culture that might also they need in the further position in their jobs, and also to prepare the graduates for as a future leaders. That's the general idea of the MBKM. It can be done for several students that cannot meet their requirement. Is the whole 144 graded point SKS is done in own university. So it is a kind of normal program. So they can do whatever they want, they have now. And the second one is they can do 184 SKS, or it's 11 semesters within the study program, and one semester outside the study program with different campus that might be the same study program but in different campus. That they can also take 20 SKS, 20 credit points outside the university, but this the same study program. They also have the option to do 2 semester. It is 40 credit points. So the student has to finish 144, and out of them is 84 is the compulsory courses in own study program. 20 SKS can be done outside the study program, outside the university, the same study program, and 40 SKS can be done in the different university, different study program, and also with the different activities that I will explain later. Mentioned here as uh, B, BKP is stands for the activity of learnings outside the university. And the challenge is that this should be done. Uh, sorry, that need several models for MOU, because that happens that the university and also the company that will be the place for doing this trainership or other activities. They don't have a kind of standard models, especially the in the company. They don't have a kind of curriculum for the students. Then we need several models for the MOU, and also in the company and also in the university, they need a kind of supervisor that needs details MOA, a kind of agreements, detail how it can be done, what kind of curriculum, especially if we do a trainership in the company, that they usually based on the profit oriented, while in the university they based on the education. So then that's a different way of perspective, that how we match these two needs together. And also we need a kind of several models for credit transfer. That's one thing that we need to find and also to think about. And besides that, students have the right, and university must facilitate. So that's our goals this semester, that we do a curriculum design, redesign curriculum, such that we facilitate all the student needs. So this is a kind of general outline. So as I mentioned, the students do all the compulsory uh, credit for own study program in 5 semester. It's just around 87 SKS, and student out of this 144, they have the right in the last 3 semester to do outside the campus. What is the outside the campus activity? Is after the 5 semester, it's a semester 6, 7, and 8. So in principle, it could be 40% of the total SKS. All these 9 activity, including I can mention in the next slide, is let me clear first. There are 9 activities that we could be done after this 5 semester. Is this called the student exchange? The first one is this one is student exchange. So the student exchange can be done in the same university, different study program. For example, my student from mathematics, they can do also take from the economics. They can also take from the social sciences, other social sciences, as long as the supervisor and the student advisor agree with that. So then there's a kind of a student exchange can be done inside the university, can also be done in outside the university, the same study program. For example, mathematics from UGM also can be done mathematics from ITB and also from other university in Indonesia, and also can be studied also in abroad. So the student exchange. The second is the what's we call as the trainership. This trainership is done in the company. This is needs a lot of MOU, especially as I said before that the company they not make ready with the curriculum of teaching the student. So then the level of problems might not fit for the problems of the students in the graduate level. So then we need really to design that this trainership can be done in several levels, might be also in the level of PhD, level of master, and then a level of bachelor degree. That's we still have to learn and also to discuss a lot of problems with matching the needs of the company on matching the needs of the university. And the third activities is to teach in schools. This is in the graduate. So the graduate students will go to the schools as a basic school, and also there's a intermediate school. So it's also in high education school. So it's not in a university. So they will have the teacher in the schools to teach the students. So they also help the students, the teacher also to prepare for the curriculum. And number four, the activity is also research. This research can be done outside so this can be also combined with the traineeship, and also can be done with the research center. It's a kind of, there are a lot of research center like LIPI in Indonesia, and also other research center in the company. Then this need a supervisor that really understand the problem of the university and also the problem of the research center, and also to match the level. And the fifth is the humanitarian project. So it's a kind of if there are an earthquake in some area. So you know Indonesia is a lot. There are a lot of natural disasters. So then when the student want to help the society, they will get the credit point. In this perspective, the number of credit points is also the problem. How actually we can calculate the right uh, point for the student, how we can should give the credit point, credit earning for this activity. And the sixth is the wirausaha, means the entrepreneurship. So the entrepreneurship, the student can also do the activities in the startup company, and there is a supervisor that can also give the credit earning there. And the seven is the study independence. So it means that while the students do the trainership, they can also take the course outside, for example, in MOOC, in any kind of platform like Coursera and other things, and then they will get the credit point for that. And besides that, the number eight is the society community services. So this can be combined also with the faith activity. With the community services, it's not always related to the natural disaster, but it's also can also combine with other activities. The activity number nine is related to the like with the military to defend the country. So this kind of nine activity. All these nine activities not yet formed into detailed activity. That's what we want to learn. What kind of activity that you also propose in your university? Uh, in uh, in our problem, in our curriculum, this nine activity should be matched in a three different way. In a free form, it means that it's not in the curriculum yet. So free form means that all this activity of the students they don't really match to the curriculum. Then it will be a new courses, can be matched to a new courses, or can be matched with a kind of hard skill and soft skill courses. So then it is a kind of free form. We are not from yet with it's a kind of free form. The structured form, that what we usually have is that we try to match with our own curriculum. So the activity outside the campus will be tried to match to the credit transfer into the curriculum that we have in the study program. And the third form is a blended form, means that we combine. If it doesn't match to the curriculum, then the student will have all the study program will have to find similar activities or similar credits that could be also transferred to that activity. So that's a kind of blended is between the structure and combined between structure and also free form. So that's all actually our problems that the freedom of learning, that we have to find a specific activity that matches to the students. So this is an examples of the activity, and also try to match it. That this can be okay. We'll go to the next slide. So, for example, it's a kind of free form, means that this 20 SKS. So one semester is consists of 20 SKS. So the student can do hard skill and soft skill. The hard skills means that all this can be matched to the curriculum. Then the hard skill, this is the competence that is proposed by the study program. And there's a kind of soft skill also, this communication skill, the creativity, and also this activities related to the soft skill. Then the study program has to match this to the curriculum. This is a free form. And also, if they cannot find the correct curriculum, what they do is try to match with the similar courses that already exist in the curriculum. So there is still a problem of how to converting all this activity outside the campus and how to match this in the curriculum. That's actually the main idea, and this blended things is related to the also to match how to match the activity outside the campus within the curriculum. Actually, that's all from me, from us, Professor Damian and Professor Yushitaka, about the structure of independent of learning, independent of campus, and that kind of problems that appear, that how actually should be done. Okay, that's all from me, Professor Damian. So I will moderate your session. So the first will be Professor Damian. So the time is yours to give an explanation. Then we will do the discussion after that.
Thank you, Erwan. I need someone to let me share the screen. Maybe Wiwid or Erwan, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Okay. Mas Andre. Okay. So now you are co-host. Please share the screen.
Okay. Thank you. So thank you for your time, and I prepared a small presentation earlier before I heard all the details from Erwan. So I will, as I go through my experience from the University of Sydney, I will try and link some of the information back to where it might be located in our experience. To give you an example, most of the degrees I work with at the university would be equivalent to 196 credit points to get the degree. So you have SKS, we have credit points, 196 credit points to get the degree. The component I'm going to talk about later, which is called professional development, or the internship, as you call it, would be 6 credit points of that degree, which means it would be 3% of the degree, okay, or the whole degree, not 27% or 30% of your degree. And maybe you'll understand why in a moment it is a little bit different in the system. So I'll just launch this, and Erwan, just speed me up if you need me to as I go through. So first of all, I just want to structure just different components of the degree so you're aware. So I'm going to break the degree up into components where I talk about ways of knowing. And so there's this idea of people know, and if I had to translate, that means be a discipline expert. So have deep expertise in an area, and we expect everyone to have a degree to have some discipline expertise in something, at the end. To know of, in other words, how that expertise integrates with other disciplines or integrates with problems or integrates with ideas. So sort of the application of that. And then it's also aware. And this is where the internship in our case comes in. So they're aware how their degree might integrate with, as you said, for example, integrate in the private sector with a company, or integrate in a humanitarian space, or various areas. So I'm going to break the degree up in these lines. And I'm not going to go into details, but this just gives you an idea of the depth of learning. Obviously, know is very deep learning, and aware is not very deep learning. So, and those people who are used to Bloom's taxonomy, aware would be down this end of idea of describing, but know would be the idea of almost synthesizing or creating knowledge. Okay, if you want to think about the depth of knowing, if to give you some scale to work on. And depending on the type of degree, you might think that in a junior year, people are aware, and in the intermediate year, they know of, and in the senior year, they know. Or if you wanted to look between degrees, a bachelor degree, some people might say they're aware of a discipline. A master's degree, they might specialize in the discipline, and a doctor of philosophy, they create new knowledge about the discipline. So there's different ways you could look at this model. So when we talk about the know, now the know here, one might align, if I wanted to say, is you're getting a discipline expertise. So we develop a curriculum and a practice of teaching, and we develop learning outcomes like you were talking about. What are the learning outcomes? What are the graduate qualities? And we develop assessment to assess those, because we want students to have a discipline knowledge, we want them to be problem solvers, and we want them to be systems thinkers. So these are things we will claim and tell the world they will have when they leave that degree. It's a very academic approach, okay? And if I look at that, this is very much, in my case, in soil, this is very much this knowing concept. It's a disciplinary expertise. So someone with a bachelor's degree might sit here, they know a lot about soil, but someone with a PhD might be working with the unknown, for example. They might sit up here in this particular space. But where it's important for you, Erwan, is when you talked about your examples and you talked about the idea of doing exchange for mathematics, studying mathematics somewhere else, or you talked about Coursera, or you talked about an opportunity to do research, what we would normally do is we would give them credit not into an internship space. We would normally give that credit to maybe replace some of this learning of knowing, some of this deep learning. So that's where the credit might occur in our institution. So it doesn't say it's right or correct, but that's where the credit would equivalate. So we would expect to see the depth of learning, the assessment that's associated with those activities of exchange, or the Coursera, the online learning, or even the research activity to contribute to this idea of knowing or replacing part of the discipline. And the reason I say that, of the examples you gave, they're probably the easiest ones, Erwan, I can see for you to map across. Because you can look at another curriculum at another institution and you can map, and the people there will have experience in teaching and know how to design a curriculum. Or you could look at the Coursera course online and you could look at the depth of learning and the learning outcomes. So you could easily map that assessment across, and you could look at the time spent and say, we think this is equivalent to the hours, okay, in that period of time. So that's where we would map that idea into our curriculum, if you like, at the University of Sydney. Okay, as a comparison, all right? So, and that can be, sometimes, and that student might do an exchange for one semester. So they might do 24 credit points of exchange or 48 credit points of exchange, in a program, okay, for a semester. So that puts those examples into our system, which is a little bit different. But we also know that there's this claim, if you look at learning outcomes, that we want students to know how their discipline knowledge, their deep knowledge, so in your case, Erwan, their deep knowledge of mathematics, how that might integrate with, say, how would mathematics be applied for students who want to do accounting or the banking sector or something like that? So how can they use this deep knowledge? How can an actuary use their knowledge somewhere else? Okay, so this is where we come up with this concept of know of. And what we've done at the University of Sydney, which is a little bit different than know of, is we've developed this idea of an interdisciplinary experience. And the reason being is this is where the knowledge now is not knowing deep knowledge about the discipline, but about how relevant the knowledge is, how useful the knowledge is, how do other people value that knowledge, how do people see that knowledge as effective about bringing about change. And some of this might align with your concept that you're talking about developing an MOU with a company, you know, with the thought of thinking, if you wanted to develop some MOUs with a company, you might be thinking about students are showing this sort of outcome in their assessment rather than showing they know deep knowledge about Gaussian theory or something like that, okay? You know, in a particular context. But they might show how Gaussian theory is relevant to solve a particular problem. Okay, so it meets the structure now is about meeting a community demands and how the disciplines are integrating. And this is because this is, I think, what you're alluding to, Erwan, this idea of being work ready or the business of the discipline. It moves it a bit outside the academia. And we've created these multidisciplinary experiences, which some of the people who've seen me in the past I talked in detail about that, and I know Professor Wiwid has a recording of that material if people want to watch that, where we talked about this interdisciplinary experience, where we get students in the same room, say students from the School of Mathematics, say working with the School of Human Nutrition, working together in the same room in a course and working with a problem that's provided by industry, and they work together. But the thing there, Erwan, that's still very much with the academics. The industry come in, the industry give the problem, the industry might help evaluate, but they don't necessarily run the course. You know, the academic is still in the room, okay, with these sorts of courses. So it has some engagement with that community idea you're talking about, or the humanitarian idea you're talking about, or with the company or the company idea, but probably not quite what you want to deliver. It's sort of probably halfway between the two, okay, that we're looking at as an idea. And the reason being is because we've started to work on this idea that at the University of Sydney, we want to be able to guarantee the student and guarantee someone who employs the students or evaluates the students that they'll have disciplinary expertise, they know how to solve authentic problems, they know how to analyze information or data, they know how to assess the integrity of information or data, they have ethics, personal responsibility, they know how to work collaboratively, and they know how to communicate. So these are the attributes that we're looking at. And in particular, I would say that these attributes are very much aligned with knowledge, and we normally assess them as through knowledge, through assessment, where these attributes you would probably call qualities or quality. So they get assessed differently, and that's where the internship comes into case, because it's very hard sometimes to assess these in a classroom situation. Okay, I know we do communication by making students do a presentation of a to an academic, but there's other ways to communicate. So that's what we look at, these qualities. So in doing that, we've developed these, and you don't have to remember them. These are for the University of Sydney, but we've developed these more formally as these criteria that the students have to meet. And I would say sometimes that inventiveness, for example, this last one here, it may be seen as a knowledge problem, but inventiveness could also work over here as a personal development, because I think inventiveness can be a hard thing to teach. It's a rather difficult thing to teach. It's sometimes it's a quality people have and some people don't have. So, and some people do it well and others don't do it so well. So inventiveness could exist over here, or it could exist here. So these ones over here, the idea of the cultural competence, the interdisciplinary effectiveness, the integrating professional and ethical identity, they work very well. They can work well in your exchange program. They probably wouldn't probably work so well in your exchange program or your Coursera program, They might work well in the research program, for example, if the students are in a research lab, but they would work definitely well. And these are the attributes I think you would be looking for developing if you're working with the community, the humanitarian, or the company, the private company or the private sector in your examples. I can't make much comment about the Army, sorry. We don't have a requirement that students or an opportunity for the Army. I know that Australia and Indonesia share a lot with Army training as part of our history, but our students at university usually don't engage with those programs in the time. So we've got this student here that can graduate with these two qualities. That's the focus of what we're looking at. But what we're also considering is this idea of aware. Now, this aware is sort of a more long-term thinking, and this is really what the idea of the internship is about. Letting the student say, well, how does your degree work in the real world? How does your degree bring value to you? And we have this thing called an internship. Now, all I'm going to say about the internship, because I think through a discussion, a dialogue after Yoshi speaks would be a much better way to unpack this, okay? We'll make it much clearer, is sometimes people think of this as being the professional, and industries have this idea of professionalization or professionals. I mean, we have certified accountants, for example. Engineers have to become part of a professional body to practice. Doctors have to be part of a college of surgeons, for example, to practice. So we have these professions. And these are about maintaining qualities and standards and recognition. But not in all cases do we have a professional accreditation. So, for example, we have a professional accreditation for medicine. We have it for engineers, we have it for accountants, we have it for veterinarians, but we don't have professional accreditation for agriculture. So it's very hard for us to develop which if you wanted to develop a professional accreditation, there are many examples online of how to do that, okay? Many examples of the process. But with internship, it's a little bit more difficult, or placement. And the difference here between internship or placement is how you're going to assess. So the internship, you do the assessment at the place of where the work is done, where the placement or the experience, you will do the assessment back at the university. So it's where you do the assessment. If it's done by the person who's looking after the student in the placement, that's an internship. If the assessment is done, for example, by you, Erwan, that you send the student to a company, but you bring the students back and you assess their work, then that's a placement. And it's important to distinguish the two because it impacts on how much you have to train the supervisor at the placement in the company. Because you can have an MOU about what experiences you want the student to have with the company, but the critical thing is, do you want the company to do the assessment and then you accept their assessment to go towards the student's marks, or do you want to do the assessment back at the university of what the student did at the company? And that has a big impact on, because then there's a whole training dimension you have to bring in. So there's a lot of work there with the companies of training people up. And unlike the university, the challenge there, Erwan and Wiwid, the challenge there is that companies change people all the time. Yeah, humanitarian NGOs come and go. They're there and sometimes they're not there. So people change all the time. I know in universities they do, but the change is slower compared to the company. So the training would always have to be ongoing, yeah? Or every time you get a new supervisor, you'd have to spend time training. So it's just something to think about as you move forward, where you want the assessment done when you're looking at these options. Now, for the exchange program, the Coursera or the research, you know where the assessment's being done and you can manage that. But when it comes to the community, the humanitarian or the company, you might want to look at the assessment where it's more around a placement as an idea. I'm not going to go into these. These are just because you will get these slides so you can see this is just an example of what some of the learning outcomes we have. I'm not going to read them out because you will have your own and you might see some similarities. I want to just say here too, and I'm not going to read these in details, I just want to say that the level of engagement too, you have to think of the level of engagement at occurring at different levels. So what you presented, Erwan, for us is what we would present to is very much what the university wants. You know, there's going to be a governance structure. This is what we need to do. And there needs to be rules and regulations. And there's going to be people who are responsible, but it's not necessarily what the students are going to experience. Yeah. So the rules that we intend aren't always what the student experiences. So we need to be mindful. And I'm just going to let you in your own time read these ideas, or as I said, we can organize another time to speak later in the future to unpack this further as you develop your program. But this is just some of the things we've been thinking about as we develop our placement or internship. There's also a level of engagement to do with the faculty. You know, you have to engage your staff. If your staff aren't engaged, they won't believe it. They'll think it's a waste of time. They'll think the students are wasting their time. So there's a level of engagement there. So how the leaders of the university, the teachers and the students are engaging with this process at the faculty level. And then there's the individual. So you're in a leadership role, Erwan, but many of your colleagues online at the moment, some of them will be in a leadership role, but some of them will be in a teacher role. So how are they engaging with this process, and how are the students? So in other words, what the expectations are for each one of those, and how we're going to confirm if those expectations are met. So these are some of the things that I think you need to map out as part of this process as we move forward with these expectations. Because at the moment, what I see is a lot of high level rules and regulations, and it needs to come down a little bit. Institutional support, you know most of this. I'm just going to say that there's lots of materials I can share with you, or we can talk in the future because we don't have time to go through them with this presentation today. But, you know, very clear on roles and responsibilities. And when you're dealing with your community, humanitarian or company, you may want to have what's very clear, which you're saying, what's the responsibility of the internship manager, i.e. the supervisor on the internship, and you might want to then also have an academic mentor. So you might need to have two roles that are very clearly defined here to make sure that this person's making sure it meets the requirements of the university, and this person's making sure the student does the work. It's just where you do the assessment around these is going to make the decision. We do more placements than internships because, as I said, I do the assessment. I have a separate assessment program that the students do as part of this course that the supervisor on placement is not responsible for. All they do is they say that the student turned up and they sign a document to say the student attended and the student did the work that was expected, i.e. that was agreed upon, but they don't evaluate the performance of that student. Okay, that's done separately. That's done by me. Okay, back at the institution, because otherwise I would have to be training people. And as you know, in agriculture, there's a requirement in our school, the students have to spend at least 20 days on a farm. And the students go to about 500 different farms in 3 or 4 years. And I don't have time to train 500 farmers in how to do the assessment. It's just too difficult. Okay. And then how it's timetabled in or out of semester, which you already do. So then there's pre-internship procedures, which you've got, which as I said, this is just for information of what we think about. It's just so you can see if you align it. But how the internship set up, and you're talking about having MOUs, so that's very clear of how you're going to set yours up and how you're going to decide which students go where. So for example, in the School of Business, where I'm at the University of Sydney, students have to have a mark over a certain level to go and work for a company. If the students don't have a mark over that level, they would do a community project. So they actually distinguish. In agriculture, we don't do that, but in the School of Business, they do. But the reason being, in the School of Business, they might have 2,000, 3,000 students in 1 year. So to place them, they only want their top students to go to the companies and the other students to work in the community project. So they use that as a filter, okay, in that school. Then there's also, obviously, you'll be doing this anyway, training and preparing for the internship. But the thing here is to make it very clear what the expectations of the employer are. This is where the difficulties arise. Not so much the student, it's about making sure the employer knows what's expected of them. Because an MOU will talk about things at a certain level, but you need to then go to the next level down to know what those expectations are. And that's going to be unique to your degree and institution, Erwan and Wiwid. And then there's on the internships, which, as I said, I won't go through, but these are just things that to think about, which I'm sure many people are. But for our internship, all we're doing is we get students to keep a diary of their activities and their reflections. And when we assess that, when I assess that and it comes back, that means we give student credit for days. So students have to do 40 days in total of their internship. That means if you look at our credit points, Erwan, we are only giving credit for 2 hours a day. So the students might work a 7.5 hour day, but we say the academic equivalent is 2 hours. So 7.5 hours equals 2 hours approximately. Okay, because we know on the internship, there are times they're doing activities that might require a lot of deep activity and other times they're not doing so much. So that's the balance, if you like. Okay, and we say that the assessment should equal probably about 30 hours, okay, all up, the assessment program. So that's the balance that we break. So when they complete these 2 assessment activities, that's all I want to point out here, we just give them the credit for the day. So at the end of the day, all that does, that allows their marks from their assessment, which I manage, to be released. So they're not marked for the days. Each day doesn't receive a mark. There is no assessment. There's no assessment as such of the activity or the reflection. It's a pass-fail. You either did enough work or you didn't. And if you did enough work, then we will give you 10 days of credit. And ultimately, you have to add up to 40 days. What we do is we have a separate activity where they do a reporting structure, which is not marked by the supervisor of the internship. It's not addressed by that supervisor. It's assessed and set by me as an activity. And we can talk about that another time. It's called a portfolio. We get them to do a portfolio of ideas, okay, that they need to report on. These are just tips for success we give the students. As I said, I won't dwell on them because I want Yoshi to speak as well. And as I said, I get them to do a portfolio in the end, and depending on the type of internships they've done, that might be more a scientific type portfolio. It might be more a business type portfolio because they may have worked more in the private sector, or it might be a critical review. And that might relate to the idea of a community type portfolio. So there's different types of presentations and a seminar that we give the students, and that's where they're actually marked. So that's where and that's the mark that goes against the credit points, or the SKS in your case, the time that's given to the students. So the difference between the two, why we use this process more than this process, is basically the outcomes have a moderate, don't have to be so strongly aligned with the degree. So it depends on how the host organization, how strongly they align with the degree. So a host organization, for example, if this was an internship in engineering, we would expect the students to be placed in an engineering company, okay? We wouldn't expect them to go and work in the banking sector, okay, if it was an engineering. Where here in agriculture, we might have students who go and work with a farm, but then we have students who might also go and work with the banking sector. They might work in the finance sector, on agriculture-related ideas. So it's much more broader, the opportunity. The other thing too is the application process is normally different. Normally it's more rigorous for an internship than a placement. Okay, normally there is no need for a CV. We don't distinguish the students. So I know in past discussions with you, sometimes you see community projects sitting more over here, or humanitarian projects where private company projects might sit more on this side of the divide. And there's multiple reporting, where opposed to single reporting activities between the two. And these here contributes to the WAM, where the actual placement doesn't contribute to the marks. It's a separate assessment task that's provided to the students about the placement that contributes to the marks, okay? Because some students have a very good placement experience. They may do lots of activities that may be interesting, and sometimes placements don't work. You know, the supervisor's not very good, or something goes wrong. There's another crisis in an area. Things happen that interfere with the placement. So we still want to credit the student the days, but we don't blame them that they had a bad supervisor. You know, we can't hold the student responsible for that. So it's just a different approach, where mainly people in the internship, people who manage the students here, are usually experts themselves. So if a student's in medicine, the person they're doing an internship with is usually a doctor or a nurse, right? If it's in in engineering, the person doing the internship is an engineer, or an accountant, it is an accountant. Okay, so the person themselves are a professional, where over here, the person may not have the same alignment with the degree outcomes in the internship. So it might be a little bit different. So these are things to think about. And some of the questions I always get people to think, and we don't have to do these questions, but the first two questions here are very much really asking. So, you know, there's all these requirements, you know, students could go to exchange, could go to army, they could go to use Coursera. We have to really map out what's the purpose? What are they going to do to get each one of these, and are they equivalent? So as I said, Erwan, if students for us are doing an exchange or Coursera or working in a research lab, we may give them credit towards their more academic degree because that's the way we treat it. But if they're doing something with the community, with a private company or a humanitarian, we would give them credit towards their internship. So when we answer that question about what we want the students to learn on both those groups of experiences, we would give them credit in different places, okay? And then how it's connected to the discipline. Because if your academic colleagues aren't convinced by these first two questions, they won't believe the next two questions. They won't understand how it could be assessed, or they won't believe the credit. They won't believe the time. They won't believe what the students do is equal to 24 or 34 or 40 SKS, for example. They won't believe the credit. I think it's too generous or not generous enough. When we started our internship program many years ago, the students used to do 120 days of placement. Okay, but when we recognized that the internship was only equivalent to 3% of the degree in weighting, we could not expect the students to do 120 days of placement because that was unreasonable. And that's why we cut it back to 40 days, okay, in the placement. Because on the 120 days, we would have to say it's equivalent to more like 8 or 12% of the degree, which is too much. So the academics weren't happy with that as far as the whole degree. So that's why we cut the number of days back. So they're just some things I wanted to address in my presentation. Of course, we will learn more in the discussion that we have, or the questions we have here today or in the future, Erwan. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Damian, for the presentation. So we might conclude several parts that you explained about the internship. So correct me if I'm wrong. Internship is a 6 credit point. It's around 3% for the degree, for the total degree.
Yes.
And it is conducted up to 40 days.
Yes. Yes.
And each day is only counted as 2 hours per day.
Roughly, yes. If you wanted to put it in hours, yes. Yeah. Okay.
So the main goal is to increase the way of knowledge, knowing. Yes. So it's aware, know of, and also knows to create something. Then you said also about how to assess the student, and you propose that in what is it called, the placement and internship. So the placement is more easier for the teacher rather than for the trainership, internship, where the grade is given by the person in the company. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, that's correct. Because Erwan, the difference is the normally the grade in the company is you have to have very clear competencies, much like a doctor does. You know, so when a doctor does an internship, there's competencies they're meeting, and that's agreed by the profession, not just your university, but the whole profession. So if you can't get agreement on competencies, then it's better that you don't look at an internship. You look at a placement, because there may not be a national agreement on competencies. Yeah.
Okay. I agree with that. Okay. Thank you, Prof. Damian. And so, ladies and gentlemen, so if you have any questions, so please put it on the chat. You can also put it in Indonesian, and I will try to translate to Prof. Damian. So the next session, it will be first is to have an idea and also a perspective from Japan. So Professor Yustaka, the time is yours for 30 minutes.
Okay, hi everybody. I'll just try to start the presentation. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Well, how do you say it in Indonesian? Selamat pagi, maybe.
Yeah.
Bagus, bagus.
That's correct.
Okay. So I was just chatting with Wiwit and other professors before the meeting, and I still have little idea what sort of ideas I should be bringing up in this particular workshop or conferences. But I just thought I share some of my experiences in universities in Japan, and I think it will be a good conversation starter anyway. So nice to meet you, everybody. So just a bit of an introduction or self-introduction. My name is Yoshi, well, Uchida. You can call me Yoshi. So I run a laboratory called Environmental Biogeochemistry. I think the unique part of myself is I've never been to university in Japan. So I'm a Japanese, but all my tertiary education is done in New Zealand, Lincoln University. And then back to Japan, started working at a university in Japan. I think a lot of things are actually new for me. And also I have a lot of questions about how Japanese people run universities. So maybe I can share some of my thoughts during my talk. And I do study nutrient cyclings, nitrogen, carbon. I know things like peatlands, carbon sequestration. That's a big thing for Indonesia. Some of my projects are related to those as well. So I just want to share the video of myself traveling to work a few days ago. So this is why I'm not as active and excited compared to Damien. Just blame the weather. So if you're ever visiting Hokkaido, you'll see something like this time of the year. So I know I have around 30 minutes. So what I want to do first is, I think I just want to explain about Japanese society because I know Indonesia populations are so increasing rapidly, economic growing. Australia, not as quick as Indonesia, but still populations increasing. And also, I know Australia, most of young ones receive tertiary degrees, some sort of. But here in Japan, after I came back from New Zealand, there are a lot of uniqueness and a lot of sort of like a little bit darker side in the society. I just want to explain a little bit of that because that's related to the how universities are going in the future. And I'll try to develop some of my key philosophies or concepts of my education. I just question myself, why do people need university education anyway in countries like Japan? So I hope you can get some idea in your position somehow. And then I was involved in the establishment of Graduate School of Global Food Resources as a new school. I know your internship program is focusing on undergraduate, but still you can relate many of the activities we do, although this graduate school is focusing on master and PhD courses. Now, and one of the things I just want to talk a little bit in detail today is about the field tours, the field activities. I don't know whether you can call it internship or not, but it's still quite similar because you work with the community, work with people outside universities. As just Damien told you, they have to understand what we want to achieve through the activities. So maybe we can certainly relate to that. And of course, we have a lot of challenges and needs, so we'll try to explain that in 20 minutes or so. Okay, so just as I said to you, Japan, shrinking society, I call it. Well, not me, but everybody talks about it. One of the things is still a lot of Asian people think Japan is a developed and rich country, but if you can see that the relative salary per unit of it's just not increasing over the last 20, 30 years. And populations are decreasing and elderly rates are increasing. So that means that there are more and more elderly people living in here. So that will slow down the consumption activities. So that means companies are not paying people as much as they should be. So there are a lot of reasons. I'm not an economist, I can't really comment on that, but it's a reality. When I go back to New Zealand time to time, I always feel things are much more expensive. this is because New Zealand people's salary are increasing, but our salary is not increasing. Okay, not complaining, but it's just a reality. And also, as a scientist, we talk about publications and university rankings, which are not necessarily the right thing. But I just want to share some of the Japanese scientists' culture or activities in the recent years. I know that Chinese scientists are doing extremely well. They publish a lot of papers in Nature, Science, those top journals. But compared to other major countries in the world, Japanese scientists are not really doing well. So just regarding number of publications. And also this is related to decreasing fundings. And also we call it brain drain. So that means clever ones leaving the country because they have better opportunities in United States or maybe China. We just can't stop them. And similar here, so Asian university ranking, we always have University of Tokyo as a top of the Asian universities over the last many decades. But over the last 10 years or so, University of Tokyo and the next one is always Kyoto University. But those two universities still within the top 100, but not the top of the Asian countries anymore. And the government is aware of those slowing down scientific or researchers' activities, but we don't really have breakthrough at the moment. And also this is just one of the things I always care as a university staff or teacher. Young ones' suicide rate, it's increasing. I know there's a Korea statistic here, and Korea is also another bad one. So many young ones decided to basically end their lives by themselves for some reason. Also, of course, there are a lot of statistics for that, but we just can't stop it over the last 10 years or so. And maybe this is just the year 2013, but because of the COVID, I think things might be worse. I don't really have the statistics, but. And at the same time, just want to note that students decided to study overseas. Just like myself, I left Japan when I was a high school student to study New Zealand. The number of those students are decreasing in Japan. So that means Japanese students are not really studying overseas anymore. Of course, government support with scholarships and funds and a lot of programs, but compared to other countries, of course, there are China, India, other countries, just Japanese students are not deciding to travel overseas to study. So those are some of the background information that I want you to know before I talk about some of the programs in Japanese universities or Hokkaido University. And also another thing that I just want to share is the job hunting culture in Japan. This is something very new for me. After I came back to Japan, I didn't know that Japanese people spend so much time job hunting. They start maybe 1 or 2 years before they actually graduate. So how they do it, but they do internship, but also things like this photo, the attitudes during the interview are extremely important for students. I don't know about Indonesia, but Japanese students, they learn how to enter the room during the interview, how to introduce themselves and how to answer some of the questions by potential employers. And well, arguably, for me, these are all very silly. I don't really know why university staffs have to spend hours teaching them how to sit and how to answer employers' comments during the interview. But actually many universities actually do that. So, and also the culture of Japanese job hunting, well, maybe my opinion is a little bit biased, but interviewers often ask questions about what students did outside their studies. So I know what you studied. I know you studied soil science or agriculture, but what did you do? What else did you do? Did you do any sports? Did you do any cultural activities? So internship or field activities, they're actually good because then the students have something to talk regarding the activities outside their normal curriculum or normal academic studies. But anyway, those are the cultures of Japanese job hunting system, and it's quite unique. a little bit different from other countries. So these are my kind of like a philosophy of my education. I think freedom of learning, I think they're very good words. I like that, but it's different depending on the country. And for Japanese students, well, in general, they don't really see economic growth of their country in your future. I think Indonesian young ones always, they see the bright future of bright economic growth, but not for us in general. And results, maybe students want a degree with minimum effort and time, and their focus is to get a reasonably good job. So not, they learn a lot of things in different ways, but they just want to get a job and they need to get a university degree to do that. Well, I'm just commenting it negatively, but they are something I think. So can university offer something meaningful for the students? And for me, I think Japanese university courses should be focusing on giving them skills to have hopes or be interested in many things. So being interested in new things, and there are words called maybe health or well-being or that sort of stuff, or sustainable. Those can be focus of Japanese university degrees in future, because just simply because we are living in the shrinking society, and I'm still feeling positive about it. I'm not negative about all that. Just a couple of thoughts. I don't read many books. I only read some interesting books, but some of the books are quite interesting. One is Ikigai. So this is written by Spanish person who are researching why Japanese people live longer than others. Of course, we have special diet, special climate and culture, but one of the things he thought was Japanese people, older people are how to say, happy to be busy on something every day. So that's called Ikigai. I'm very happy to be busy. I'm 100 years old, but I'm busy every day and I'm happy. So I just have to live longer. So that's Ikigai. And those sort of concepts of philosophy are started losing for younger generations in Japan. And also that's another book I just grasped a few days ago, Don't Go Back to School. So this is also, a lot of people started saying, you don't need to go to school to learn because there are so many information. You can just learn by yourself. Just search internet or just, learn something and teach others. You can still get a lot of knowledge out of it. And okay, so that is true. So what is university? Right? What's special about universities? That's something I started feeling these days. Right, I talked too much. I'll try to move on quickly. So this is one of the slides that I used to recruit students for the new school, graduate school, Global Hood Resources. And as the word speaks itself, we integrate humanities and sciences to produce pioneering global leaders, blah, blah, blah. So it's very similar to what Erwan commented when he talked about the new program, and we particularly focus on global food resources. And to achieve that, we use the word generalist in contrast to the specialist. And of course, it's a master course, but we try to teach them in various things. So it's not just one specific research theme, but they have to study a lot of different things, and also including field activities. So Wandervogel is a German word for explore. It's exploration. So they have to go into the mountain and find some new plant species or something. That's Wandervogel. So we just steal the word to explain some of the focus of our field activities. And these are the staff members and the concept of the subjects that we teach. So you can see that there are 3 different colors. So 3 different colors focusing on environment and production, and also we call it governance, but governance is more like economics. So students must learn those 3 aspects: environment, production. Production means agriculture production, maybe genetic modification, that sort of stuff, production. And governance, of course, they are studying rural communities, value chain, that sort of stuff. And students learn not only from Japanese staffs, but we invite a lot of professors from overseas. They give maybe one-off or maybe 2 or 3 lectures, particularly online for the last couple of years. And also you can see people from outside the university, former ambassador and of Japan to Sri Lanka. So there are some ambassador or some people worked in different fields, and they can give some lectures for our students to understand the global food resource issues. Now, I just want to comment a little bit on the curriculum. So curriculum, there are a lot of field work. So I think in total, they have to take 30 credits or so. And the field work, there are 4 credits. And there's another one here. So probably a little bit more than 3%, maybe 5% or so involved in the field work. And if they choose to do that, they might be able to do more. So that's necessarily, we call it internship. And we normally tailor-made some of the field subjects. So it's a little bit different from the internship that Damien mentioned, but still we consider sending students outside the campus very important. And we used to have the program to send all the students to Denmark for a couple of weeks to learn about modern agriculture, and Myanmar for a couple of weeks to understand more like a developing kind of agriculture. But we can't do it anymore for the last few years. So we will talk a little bit about what sort of other things we did over the last 1 or 2 years. Okay, so this is one of the YouTube videos that highlight of the trip to Myanmar. So what students did was they went to local school and they taught a few things, and they involved with the NGO activities. So of course they worked with the local university students, and they did a presentation for the local communities as well. Okay, so those are some of the things that we organize for rather, how to say, as I commented, rather shy and non-outgoing Japanese students. They have to go outside country, they have to experience something new, and then they will learn something different from our normal curriculum. Okay, and then just finally, I just want to comment on the some of the alternative activities that I involved in planning because all those overseas fieldwork have been cancelled. So we have to come up with something new, and we decided to take students to a little village called Kuromatsunai. So it's just middle of nowhere within our island, Hokkaido. But in result, things really went well. I'll explain the details in a minute, but I split students into different groups, and different groups focusing on different food resources, as you can see from here. And also I talked or negotiated with city council or mayors, and they have young staffs called Regional Revitalization Cooperation Team. So their young ones migrated from maybe bigger cities to Kuromatsunai village. They are looking for something to revitalize the village because, as I said to you, they are so elderly. There are a lot of elderly people, but not much activities or not much revitalization going. So basically we pair up or we team up with my students from university and the Regional Revitalization Cooperation Team, and they team up and they think about something new or something unique for specific food resources related industry in the local villages. And they invited, we invited people like city mayors and some politicians involved in the village, and we did a presentation. So it's just only 1 week field work, but I think all went well, and I just tried to share some of the activities. So there are things like sweet fish. So it's a very beautiful, tasty fish, but people in Sapporo, for example, people in big city, they don't really know anything about Kuromatsunai city village sweet fish, and students in this group thought about why is that? What people in this village have to do to sell those nice fish to people in big cities, or maybe should we selling those fish anyway? And similar to do that, similar thing is buckwheat, or also there are farmers migrated from Texas. Actually, he's American guy, started farming in this village, so we visit them, and also potatoes. Basically, each group of students will interview those farmers, or maybe do some research, or maybe help their activities, and then you try to propose something positive for the future of those industries for each food-related products. And also, I think the reason those activities went really well is we gave some positive feedback for locals. So we are just not just troubling them. Well, we trouble them a lot because we send students away, but I think a lot of staffs, a lot of local communities, they learned many things from my students as well, because they never associated with master's students from Hokkaido University. They are living in a very quiet village, and it's a rare case. Maybe 10 or 15 students come to their town at the same time. Everybody knows that we are here. So I think those are some of the activities that we may possibly do, and probably urban, maybe I'll ask your opinion, but I know Indonesia, there are different islands, different villages, different type of people. I mean, students might be able to learn completely different things from those activities. Doesn't necessarily we call it an internship or not. So I just, you commented on the crediting, so I just want to talk a little bit about crediting here. So for us, crediting or evaluating students when they did something outside the campus, it's not easy, as just you commented, particularly for one-off lectures or activities involving in the staffs outside universities, always involved in reports, and sometimes we receive complaints from students that don't give me reports for every lecture. It's just too much for us. And also field work, it's the same. Presentation, they have to do presentation, and we can assess the involvement in activities. But it's again difficult. You have to be with students all the time, intensively observing what students do. And it has been difficult for Kuromatsunai trip because I split students into 4 groups. So 4 groups are in 4 different cars. They're interviewing different people. So I have no idea who contributed more for the field work. So it's not easy to give them marks. But for courses, I think it's good to have a good thing for Hokkaido universities. Hokkaido University have always flexible courses. So it's called maybe International Activities 101 or something, that no syllabus, but just subjects are there. So if students did something unique, for example, internship in maybe developing countries or something, and if she needs a credit for it, we can write a specific syllabus for her or for him. We apply to student administrations. If they say yes, they can get a subject credit called international activities, and we decide whether she get A+ or B or C. But professor has to apply for it. So the students need somebody intensively helping that person. So it may be difficult for first and second year students because they still don't really have personal connection with professors. They are a little bit shy to ask or trouble professors to do something like that. To be honest, there are a lot of people paperwork needs to be done to give students for flexible crediting. But for internship, students will do them anyway because they normally spend a lot of time job hunting, as I said to you. So doing internship is their priority, particularly for undergraduate. So they sometimes even forget about graduation thesis and they do internship, and then the professor's upset. There are lots of things like that. So I really, well, I haven't really thought about crediting system for the internship or placement because students will do it anyway. But after listening to your talks, maybe we might need, or there are some needs from students to incorporate those internship with the courses as well. That's something I thought. So just to wrap up my talk, I think students in Japan needs a reason to study for university. So it should be more than just to get a good job. And I think opportunities to know, well, Damien talked about know of, but not too deep, but different scientific area. So students might be studying science, maybe they might be interested in economics if they listen to economic lectures. So I think those are important things. And also communication with people outside university is often good for them. Do I have still time? Yeah, there are interesting stories. So in Kuromatsunai town, I took students to a potato farmer, and he believes funny thing like if he eats good potatoes, he never get COVID virus or something like that. They are very unique type of farmers with strong thoughts. And it's quite interesting how students handle those interesting people when they talk with them. But it's just communication skills, aren't they? They have to know how to talk with those people. They can't really just run away from them because they are doing some kind of field activities. And I think they had a very good time, and they experienced very unique things over those field activities. But I realized that even Japanese students are living in shrinking society. They are eager to study something they don't know. So we just have to give them opportunities. And also they love to understand that what they are studying is actually useful for local communities. So when they gave a presentation for the local communities, sometimes they get a very good feedback, and they're very happy about it. Something they proposed actually meaningful for the small villages. So I think those are something I have been learning over the last few years. So challenges that I want to share, because I know we will be discussing some of those. We don't know the success of this new style school. So we made the school, but we only graduated maybe 2 generations. So of course, many of them get a good job, but I don't know whether they will regret that they went to this school or not, because there are bigger schools such as Graduate School of Agriculture. The hundreds of students are there, so it's different from my school. But I don't know what they will be thinking in 10 or 20 years. So we just have to follow them up. And also because those new style of school, again, I know Erwin and Wiwit, maybe you guys have the similar issues. Sustainable management is not easy because we have to keep getting funds to run the school. Graduate School of Global Food Resources, we started with some government funding. Ministry of Education funded us a lot. So we actually built a new building for it. And it's kickstarted okay, but we never know in 5 or 10 years. And organizing the field trip, some professors love to do that. They spend a lot of time. They spend a lot of time talking with local communities. They visit there. They organize very nice short courses or field trips. But other professors actually not so much. And again, similar to these passions, both from students and from staffs. So when build a new school, I know Erwin, you are building a new school. I'm sure for the first year, people are excited. A lot of students, oh, they're a new school, I want to enroll in the school. So the school is popular, but after 2-3 years, maybe the enrollment number, whether you can keep the same number or not, you never know. Especially difficult in Japan because kids numbers are decreasing. And also retirement of the original staff. So of course, I will not retire in 10, 20 years, but many of the professors who are involved in the planning of this particular school, they started retiring. So that means the new staffs, they are not involved in the planning of this new school. So they sometimes disagree with the concepts that we teach because they are not involved in the planning. So they might say, why do you need to take students to Denmark and Myanmar every year? That's a waste of time. Why don't we do it just once? And when new staff started saying something like that, it's very hard to do a positive discussion within the school, and that will be influencing the quality of our curriculum, in my opinion, anyway. So those are some of the challenges we have when we run this particular new school, and I hope my talk was kind of meaningful for some of you guys. That's it for me. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Professor Yoshitaka. Give an applause. Thank you very much for the nice point from Japan. So let me summarize first before we have an open mic for the question and answer. It's quite nice. Your finding, Professor Yoshitaka, is like what we find also here, that some students also say that might be university is not meaningful anymore, so that they don't need degree anymore. That's also happens, that the number of students who enroll to university also decreasing. But it's also nice that in your job hunting, that attitude is important. That's also a part of our MBKM to give the student experience, to give that the attitude in a professional way. But can it be taught also in a university? That's still our questions. And also that the students want to have a degree with the minimum effort and minimum time. That's also a part of our problem with the MBKM. The length of the study will be longer because the student will do a trainership maybe more than one semester. That's also one of our problem. So, but it's good to have that. Happy to be busy is something that really what is it called? Okigawa. It's in Japan.
Ikigai.
Ikigai is really important. But it's good to find. Okay. Let's have an open question from the audience. So, Ikigai. Okay, thank you, Prof. So we have one question for Professor Damian in chat, but I open also open mic to Rina. If you can open mic, then pose the question directly to Professor Dan.
Yes.
Okay, this is okay.
Thank you, Pak
please.
Ivan. Prof. Damian, can I ask about the criteria to determine the internship score? Because in our procedure, there is also a score for portfolio and also the presentation. Yes.
So yes, thank you, Rina, for your Ibu Rina, for your question. So yes, we the presentation has. You could divide the criteria into two components, Rina. So the first component is more about if you like, the knowledge, the content. So it's very much about, did you describe the issue or the problem clearly? Did you provide how the rationale of how you addressed the issue or the problem, and how robust that rationale was? You know, what sort of methods did you use? What your findings were, and what were your conclusions? And the difference here with conclusions that's different from research is the conclusions are divided into what we call outputs versus outcomes. So the outputs are those things that would be directly delivered by the project that they worked on, where the outcomes would say, how could those outputs then influence society or influence the problem? And that might be now or in the next 5 years or 10 years. So it's to get the students to realize there are things that you control and there are outputs that you don't control. Outcomes are decided by other people. not all outputs go to policy. Not all outputs are adopted by the company. Not all outputs are adopted by the community. So it's to understand that difference, because many people graduate, and in fact many scientists I work with still don't understand the difference between outputs and outcomes. They can't. How many times have you heard, if people only knew more science, they'd understand climate change and we'd be changing the world? No, it doesn't work that way. It's a much more complex. And then the other component of the marks, usually about 60%, so that's about 40% of the marks, Rena. Then about 60% of the marks are on the normal communication, were how clearly did they articulate, the quality of the slides, the organization of the talk, the style of presentation, because you have to make the you have to give a mark for the reason why they're doing an oral presentation as opposed to a written report, which were different communication. Okay. So that's the example there. Yeah. With the portfolio, Rena, what we ask them to do is make an argument for an idea. So they bring an issue, and then what they do is they make an argument, and they very briefly describe what the issue is. But then and that's what you might want to call the what idea. What is this issue? But then we ask them to spend more time describing the so what. In other words, why is this issue important? Who is this issue impacting? Why do we need to do this issue now? Why can't we wait till later for this issue? So they might use evidences from academia, but they might use evidences from political documents. They might use evidences from humanitarian reports. They might use newspaper evidences, depending on the type of issue they're talking about. And then we ask them to do a now what proposal. In other words, how can we address this issue? So they never get to do the work, if you like, Rena. They never get to deliver the solution or the research, but it's to ask the students for the first time independently, not based on their lecturer, not based on their supervisor, to actually themselves think about an issue and how you would address it. Because many students leave academia always being told, this is the assignment, this is how you have to write the assignment, this is what you need to give to me, so they're always strongly directed, where this one gives them a little bit more for those students to demonstrate they're independent, because we have a graduate quality called inventiveness, and that enables us to identify inventiveness. So those assessments are controlled by us, the academics, Rena. They're not necessarily assessing the placement, but like Yoshi said, they're asking people to use the information from their placement or reflect their placement. And sometimes we involve, like Yoshi does, which I think is a fantastic idea. I want to go to Myanmar with you next time, Yoshi, okay, when it opens up, yeah? But I think it's a fantastic idea to get the students to present to the local community and sometimes get the feedback from that community. It's very important for the students to hear that. So that's how we do the assessment, Rena, for those two components.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me elaborate a little bit the questions from Burina as Vice Dean of Biology. So it means that actually the grading of the trainership in your case, is it pass or fail, or it is a kind of
no. So the days, the actual participation is a pass fail. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So the days, the accrediting of the days are pass fail. So that's one part of the assessment, and and that's me reading the student diary and their reporting. Mm-hmm. But then from that experience, Erwan, I actually then get them to do this more like the presentation of the idea that they want to work on, and that has a pass, credit, a distinction, a high distinction, or as Yoshi would say, it could have A, B, C, D, yes, or an F, so that we would have criteria. And I mean, I could share some, if you want, Erwin, I can email them to you. You'd imagine they're very wordy, A pass would mean you do this, and a credit would mean you do this. So that bit's assessed in a normal rubric type way, as opposed to the days, which are, because the days are signed off by the supervisor, because unlike Yoshi's experience, I'm not there with them. So when they're doing their placement with, say, a company, I'm not there with them every day. the only trust I can have is that the supervisor is honest and says to me, the student turned up. They said they would go for 20 days and they went for 20 days. That's the assessment there.
Okay. Thank you, Damian.
Yeah. How about the
please.
Yeah, Pak Irwan? Yes. How about the partner internship? The industry, do they have to mark the internship of the student, and how many percentage of the mark?
So in the internship I run for agriculture, no, but for an internship we do for the Master of Sustainability, the partner can provide a mark. Okay. So they will provide a mark, and usually that's done through them attending the presentation, etc. So it depends on the degree program, and if it's a competency, and I'm not talking a soft skill here, I'm talking a competency. So a competency to me is something very different. A competency as opposed to a soft skill is a soft skill or a quality is good communication. A competency would have a very specific statement about that communication. Yeah. So a doctor has to communicate in a certain way. In fact, what Yoshi was giving an example of where they were training students, and I agree with you, Yoshi, I do not understand why academics are spending time training students on how to do interview. I find that I don't understand that. I think the company is probably better to do that than the academic. But anyway, so what Yoshi was giving as an example, that could be a competency because they're setting the student out very clear criteria that they have to follow so they could assess that. Where I could say, you have to show you're professional to the student, that means something different. That's not as clear. So they don't have anything to clearly mark against. So that would be a quality. But what Yoshi's doing is saying, well, what does it mean to be a professional? You have to walk in the room this way, I don't know, 10 paces in a straight line and sit down this way in a chair, or you have to bow to everyone as you, or there's an order that you bow, between the company director to the, et cetera, et cetera. That's a competency, yeah? That's different, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for your explanation.
Okay, thank you, Marina, for the question. So any other questions from the audience? Please raise your hand and open mic, or you can write it also on the chat. Please. Maybe while waiting for someone to ask questions, so I'm interested in your point, Professor Yoshitaka, about the flexible curriculum. So for Australia, Damian said that there's already 196 credit point for the bachelor degree.
That's a 4-year degree. That's right. Yeah.
Okay, I see. For 4-year degree until. Yeah. So the degree will be also master after that. It's still bachelor. Okay.
Yeah.
And then for Japan, it's also there. You said that it's flexible curriculum. So how many credit point it is flexible? How many is compulsory in Japanese case?
I think also it depends on the course, but probably the percentage is a little bit difficult to say. But let's say maybe 10 or 20%, you can take any subjects from, for example, if you are studying Bachelor of Agriculture, maybe 10 or 20% of the credits, you can take it from other school, like Bachelor of Science or Environment or whatever. And international subjects are part of those. But normally they don't really fill those with international activities, but maybe 1 or 2. For example, when I take my students to New Zealand for a couple of weeks, they do homestay, they do go to English school, and they want a credit for it. So I write a little format. So they spend 2 weeks homestay, English school, and they visited farms and talked with farmers. And then it's just one credit of maybe one out of 90 or something like that. So it's a very small portion of the whole credit. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe in perspective of MBKM, actually out of 8 semester is 3 semester, which means it's around 40 SKS. It means it's already more than 30%. It could be the student could go outside the university, but that is only for a specific student who has a GPA 3 out of 4. So it should be the certain level for the students that they can also well perform in the environment, in the company, and also when they do trainership and all when they do research outside the campus. That's usually that we have.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. So those students doing a long-term kind of internship, some of them expected to be working for that company after the graduation? What students or employers' expectation? Do you think?
Yes,
What do you think?
That's what's one of the expectation that the company have. They can have a good students without doing an opening position, so opening recruitment, so that the student go directly to the university. But this is really small percentage of the student. Would be 1% of the students that they don't have to train. Actually, the opportunity of the company. Some company even give the software to the university, that the software can be used in the practicum in the job, the practical job, before they actually go to the company. Then the company don't have to train about using the software. For example, insurance company like Cigna, they give the software to Department of Mathematics, and then the students using the software as a part of a course, and they go directly to trainership to the company, and this company will get some 1 or 2 good students that they don't have to train and go directly to the company. That's what the company expects. But in reality, that's not the whole case. It's only 1 or 2%. But then, what about the rest? That is also the question. What about the rest of the students? If they don't really perform well, how we could grade the students? That's the kind of things that we also have to think a lot. So if you have an experience with the rest of the students, because then we would like to hear. So Damien, do you have any kind of?
Go ahead, Damien.
Do you have any kind of experience with the students with they have to do internship, but they not really perform well? So what we should do? I mean, with that student.
So that's why Erwan, that's why we've decided for the placement program, or the internship program, as you're calling it. That's why we decided for those students to have the assessment task that uses the internship as information, as material, but not the focus. Because we understand that some students will have a placement that could be very good, and it may be the student's lack of attention that the placement has not been a good experience, or it may be the supervisor's lack of attention. You know, there are some supervisors that can promise, or companies that might promise we do this, and I don't know, there may be something that happens with something in the company that requires a lot of attention, so they're not focusing on the student anymore because they have to deal with a problem or something like that. So now the universities has rules to manage that if that happens, because our job is to manage graduates, but with an internship, they just have an MOU. So they go, well, it's not really our priority. We're not so focused on that. So that's why I said if we do have anything where the student is assessed by the internship, by the people in the internship, that is very much competency driven. And that's because the competencies are not just agreed to by the University of Sydney, the competencies are agreed to by an accrediting body which exists outside the University of Sydney. So the National College of Surgeons, for example, or the Certified Accountants. So this is very much, then the students very clearly, the student, whether they go to the University of Sydney or the University of Adelaide or the University of Melbourne, they all have the same logbook, they all have the same competencies, and they are understood by the student and they're understood by the supervisor. So it's a much more mentoring, one-on-one type situation where, and that might work really well with, as you've said, and as Yoshi said, with students who have a GPA above 3, But for students with a GPA below 3, that may not work so well. Or I don't know, how many students do you need to place, Erwan? 600 students? I mean, I know there's a large number of students that can exist in agriculture, for example, you know?
It could be in total in the university level, it could be 10,000 students.
No, okay. So, no, but per program, or is it just all of
my own program?
Yeah.
So for own program is around 60. So one study program is around 60.
That's
to 100 students. Yeah.
So in a university, we would have per degree or per program, someone's responsible, yeah? Because you can't manage 10,000 students. It's impossible, It's not there. And to have MOUs for 10,000 students are very much impossible as well. So there has to be an understanding, I think, from the university's perspective about what the level of engagement they want the student, and that will then determine what level of credit they give. So the experience that I'm speaking about and Yoshi's speaking about are very focused, and we know where they fit. So I think it's a question, in my opinion, it's a question that, as well as meeting the government criteria, it's a question to also say to the government, this is how we can meet this criteria. This is what we can do. And if we take a placement approach, that allows you still to assess the students, but still let them have the experience, but you can set up an assessment for 60 students, you know what I mean, and manage that, because you can't necessarily train 60 different supervisors to assess the students. It's much harder, but Yoshi may have an opinion too, because he may have had some experience of that as well.
Okay, please. Yes.
But I think Ari has a question, so maybe you can go ahead and.
Okay. Pak Ari, you can open mic.
Okay, can you hear me, Pak Iwan?
Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Pak Iwan. Excuse me for maybe there are a lot of questions from me for clarification, right? First, when we can start, if my student apply this program, both of you, our speakers today, it could be this semester or start Augustus semester, or when. Second question is how my student apply by our university first start, or directly to your office, which office, I mean international office or university or any else, I don't know what. And the third question about durations. In our program that we call internship or placement for university or industrial, the student can take 6 months for interns. So it could be in your office, for my student can take about 6 months. That is my question. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Pak Ari. So let me rephrase the question so that you can put the questions clearly. So actually in our system, so it is not really yet formed. So the application period could be the whole period, because some company could come in the middle of the semester, and we usually start the program within the semester. So within 6 month period. So that's actually our problem. When it starts, how long the duration of the trainership, because for some company, they need also 2 months. Some company, they can also accept until 6 months. So what is your experience, Yamin and Yoshi?
Yoshi, do you want to start first, and then I will give our experience?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You mean the timing of the internship and some sort of program, right? I think it's a very good question, because particularly undergraduates, you have a lot of lectures, right, in certain slots, and Japan also has a unique sort of semester period. So we start first semester from April, and we have summer holiday in August, and then from October to January, that's the second semester. So for example, if they want to spend a semester in United States, they might have to skip a year, for example. And if it's New Zealand, Australia, that's also another thing they have to think about the timing, and so that's very important. And also for the Graduate School of Global Food Resources, because we invite a lot of overseas professors to give a lecture, there are a lot of compulsory subjects that all students have to take. So I think it's just depending on how much flexibility you give to students. So I think if students are, if professors want students to do internship, I think one of the things we have to do is we have to specify, for example, maybe 3, 4, 5 months where you don't put any compulsory lectures there. Otherwise, students are focusing on finish the degree in time, and they want to get enough credits for it. So if you provide opportunities to the internship, but if you don't provide them time without lectures, they don't really do it. I think that's how I felt for Japanese university students. I hope I answered your question.
Okay,
so
maybe
where our students apply to the office, to the email, or to the application system, where my student will be applied their document, there's data, or others document required from your office?
I think it depends, but for the field work that I explained, that's a part of the course. So when you enroll the graduate school, you choose to take that subject. It's one of those subjects. But for internship, I think normally students seek the internship by themselves, and then if they do particular activities, for example, if they do some volunteer activities in NGO or NPO, and then after that, if they want those activities accredited, that's another story. You have to approach a specific person. I think it's one of the professors, I think, just to start, like a course advisor or the dean of the faculty, whoever the students belong to. You can approach that person. You just have to explain to them, okay, I did this and this and this as an internship. Can I get a credit for it? So in Japanese universities, it's that way. We don't really provide a list of internship as a university. Yeah.
To make it clear, Professor Yoshitaka, so it means that the length of the study is not really important things for you, because for the student that might to go to US or to other country, the period of a semester will be different. So then the student, you said that will lose 1 year or 1 semester. Is that not really a problem, the length of study?
It's not the problem for us, but it depends on him or her and their parents who's paying for them.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So please proceed, Damian.
So there are three pathways that can be used, because unlike Yoshi with the internship, and this is only in selected degrees, not all degrees. Okay, so not all degrees. In the interdisciplinary, which I talked about a year ago, is required for all degrees, but the internship is only in some degrees. So there are three pathways that we can follow. So if a student is doing an exchange, so let's say, for example, they're going to an American university or a university in Japan, we have students who do that. They go for exchange. That's a different process. They normally would apply 6 months before for this exchange, and they would develop an academic plan, because that academic plan that they do on exchange, okay, so it's not just an internship, but they go to another university, let's say O1, and study mathematics at another university, for example, like for one of your students, that means they would be, that the marks they get from that university would then be used as credit to replace study in UGM, okay? So that would replace credit. So that's a total replacement. So that needs at least, Adi, that needs at least a 6-month application beforehand, because that needs a formal agreement. And so that, because you don't want students to go overseas and spend a semester and come back and you suddenly say, oh, we're not going to give you any credit. Yeah, we don't think this is equivalent. So this gets mapped as equivalence. So there's normally MOUs or agreements between the universities to do that, right? Then what you're describing with the internships, there's 2 pathways, and Yoshi's quite right. In a controlled environment where the students are doing an internship, we have some programs where we actually have that allocated within a semester of teaching. So that is a block of time in the semester. So for example, in the food and agribusiness program, we have in the 2nd semester of the 3rd year of their degree, they used to have 6 weeks within that semester, which was their internship. So there's no other teaching in that 6 weeks. All students find a placement, they do their placement within that 6 weeks, and they report back on that placement. But there's no other teaching that occurs. So the students can go and do their placement. Okay, so it's blocked out, and all the teaching occurs around that. That normally has an MOU and an agreement, and that might be the students. For example, the students might be starting their placement in September. The application process might start in April or May to get the students the placement, to make sure there's enough time to get the placement, because we can't have a student without a placement, because otherwise they're doing nothing for 6 weeks. Yeah, because there's no other teaching happening. So that's one approach. The other approach is more like what Yoshi was saying and what we have, where students find their own placements and they come back and ask, can they count this as credit? So if that's done, there's 2 ways they can do this. Some of those placements are managed centrally, i.e. we have in the Faculty of Science, we have a organization that manages those applications. So, and then they will send those to me and say, do I approve them? Now they expect those 2 months out before the internship will start, okay? Or some placements they can send directly to me and I will manage them and give them credit in that period. But usually what happens in Adi in that case is those students are doing their placements outside of semester. They're doing it in the break time between semesters. So they're not impacting on their study. Or if they're doing it within semester, it's because they're still making sure they're attending their lectures or their materials. So they have to do it after hours. It might be an internship where they do evening or something like that, you know, as a work. So and those still I usually require about a 1 month, because they're, you know, you still have to process paperwork because there's insurance, there's all those things that have to be looked at. Okay, so normally a minimum is 1 to 2 months, and the students have to make an application and they can't go till it is approved by someone. They can't go and do an internship somewhere and come back and say, oh, I worked for Rabobank for 3 months. Can you give me credit for that? They have to say, I want to work for Rabobank during this time. Can I use this as credit? And can I be given this time to go? So they ask permission. Okay, so they're all application processes.
Okay. Maybe give me a little time to clarification the credit first. In my computer science program, we no problem for converts or equivalence or students intern in industry. Every industry sectors we can convert to our course. I mean, so there is no problem. I mean, the agreement is just from our program, not from our company, right? Because the student just give us, show to us the credit or the certification that the student had from the company. That's that. So after that, they give back to our university, and myself or our here our department can give the comparison to our course. There is no problems. It could be every it could be for university, it could be for company, it could be for research in university. Every activity of student there can be converted to our program or course. There is no problems. So it's very easy for us to convert the credit to our program. There is no problem. Okay, so the two my question is how my student get the more detailed information how to apply like this.
How they get the information?
Yeah, how my student get the step by step of applying this internship program.
Yeah. So in the slide deck that I provided, Ari, we have this is a recognized, because this is a formal, a bit different from Yoshi, what Yoshi was saying. For ours, it's a formal recognition. They have to do this. They have no choice. They have to do a placement, and it's worth 6 credit points. So because it's a formal placement, they it, like any program or course, it has a course description, it has learning objectives, it has a description of the assessment, it says when it can occur, and that is shared with the students through the normal student processes. So the students know where it sits in their degree, and then how to source this information. And then what we do is we have a particular platform, like a learning management system platform, which has all the information on it. So the students enroll and they're given access to that platform. And depending on what they want to do, there are modules that have all the, not only the details for them, but the details they have to give to the placement supervisor, so they know what they have to do. So there's a whole lot of material that is all provided there. Then what I do, Ari, is I also work with the students and mentor, because the students still are confused. So I hold classes that I explain to the students, this is what you need to do and this is what you need to see. So there's also some classes as well. And in some cases, then maybe one-on-one mentoring. For some students, they might talk to me directly, and I might, like we're doing now on a Zoom, talk to the students directly. Yeah. So that's
okay. Okay, thank you, Pak Arif, for the questions, and thank you, Professor Damian and Professor Yoshitaka, for the sharing. We have a limited time, unfortunately. Before we close, so let's give some closing remark from Professor Damian and Professor Yoshitaka. Any kind of closing remark?
Oh, okay. Yoshi's much more with his ikigai, is much more philosophical than I am with some of this stuff. But yeah. So I think all I will say is that I think this is an exciting program. I think it's going to be a challenging time, and in my case, I am happy, Erwan, to in the future continue to work where I can with the institution, with UGM, to share experiences, but also maybe look and review material as this develops, because I think UGM could develop some leadership in this area to become a good example of how this is implemented, and implemented where people think it has a academic purpose or academic rigor, which I think is what people I know want to ensure, for their degree programs, that people still value the learning that comes out from UGM. But I think, like Yoshi said, the students find it very valuable. The feedback I get from the students, more than anything, the most positive feedback we have had from the students in our case is that they said, it helps me develop a curriculum vitae. So when I go and apply for my first jobs, I can say I've already worked at places, and they can show this to the employer. And more importantly, when they have to provide references, they can provide references not only from the university, but they can provide references from someone in industry. So for an employer in the private sector, it's more believable, because they respect us as academics. But, if they get a reference from someone who has supervised them at working for KPMG or Rabobank, etc., they would respect that reference as equally as important as they would from an academic. So it's very good from the students to help for their first job, to make them more competitive when they're going. And finally, I will say, as Yoshi has said, it introduces them to a new culture, a culture the university cannot provide. And I think this is very, very important, because the university has a particular culture, which sometimes is very different from culture in say other places. So it's a good experience for the the students, and especially Yoshi, when you take your students to other countries. And next time you're in New Zealand, let me know so I can. You're very close when you're in New Zealand, Yoshi. Yeah, I can come across.
Okay, thank you, Professor Damian, for the closing remark. Go to you, Professor Yoshitaka.
Okay, thank you very much for the kind invitation. I hope my talk helped some of you guys. I just want to comment that I and Damien, we have been writing a few papers recently focusing on soil science education, and I started learning a lot the gap between industry demands and the graduates that we are producing. We are producing how to say useless students might be, so we have to change. And I think similar situation is Indonesia. I think one of the challenges you have is trying to answer the demands, try to meet the demands from the industry, and I think it's brave. I just want to say that I couldn't really see the faces of all of you, but if you are young academic staffs, maybe you guys are afraid of jumping into some of those new programs. But when I started this graduate school of global food resources, I just thought I'll just see how we go. I didn't want to sit in graduate school of agriculture for the rest of my life. I thought it's fun, but I knew that I have to monitor for decades, maybe 10, 20 years. I will ask my students, whether they are happy to be part of this particular school. Similar to this course, maybe you just have to follow up for 10, 20 years. Make sure your graduates are happy when they are, developing their careers. Maybe they have family and kids and they don't work anymore. That's also fine. I think just a matter of the memory of the university studies. It has to be something valuable for them for the rest of their life, and that's how professors should be, right? We should be prioritizing those things, and I think you guys are challenging towards that, and I really respect your attitudes, and I wish all the best for the development of this particular program. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, give an applause to Professor Damian Field and Professor Yoshitaka. Give it back to you, Bu Wiwit. We have already our director, Pak Hatma. So I guess the time back to you.
Right, thank you so much, Pak Irwan. I think without further ado, I give the time to Bapak Dr. Hatma Sudatmaja for a closing remark from BIKAM and UGM. Pak Mayong.
Okay, thank you, Bu Wiwit. Thank you, Pak Irwan. Thank you to Prof. Damian and also Prof. Ujida for sharing today. Yeah, we learned a lot from the speakers about the differences in the character of students in viewing the importance of higher education to its relevance to their work. So in Indonesia, the government has identified these trends. So that's why the government gave a challenge for universities to adapt by relaxing the curriculum and then increasing the engagement with the industry or private sectors, and also develop the kind of tailor-made curriculum. And the tailor-made curriculum is a challenge that must be facilitated by the university and also the study programs with their strategic partners. So that's why now in Indonesia, all the study programs try to enlarge the collaboration with the strategic partners to develop the tailor-made curriculum for the whole curriculum in the study program. So maybe as Pak Irwan mentioned before, that the government recommends that less than around 100 credits for achieving the graduate profile. And then the rest, around 60 credits or a maximum of 3 semesters for study outside the study program, also outside the university. The student should be facilitated to study with the statistical partners, such as industry, NGO, government, and also local communities, for example. So I'm sure that both speakers' presentation are very important for us to enrich the experiences and also good practices that have been carried out by the speakers. Again, thank you very much for your time. So I hope this kind of program and also discussion could be good benefit for both of us, also for UGM, and I'm sure that in the next years, maybe we can share about what have been done with this new challenge from the government about the NPKM, and hopefully all the design is good for our students. Thank you very much, Bu Wiwit.
Thank you so much, Bapak Atma Suryatmojo, for the closing remark from UGM. We are really grateful for your attendance in the midst of your hectic time. And we thank you so much also for your support and also from UGM funding, so this webinar can be conducted today. Thank you so much for Professor Damian and Professor Yositaka for your time and effort to share with us your knowledge on experiencing how to manage the freedom learning and also the independent campus for us. So we're looking forward for future collaboration. Maybe we can visit you in Japan or in Sydney, as we planned that ages ago, Damien.
Yes, true, true.
But yeah, due to pandemic, we have to postpone that. Hopefully, next year you visit us first. Maybe Pak Mayong will support for that.
Okay.
And and also Professor Yositaka.
Prof. Damian and Prof. Uchida.
Yes,
Please come to.
It's going to be our new program for all the new vice dean and also the dean. Like we got new dean and vice dean of education. Most of them are attending this webinar today, so they will be so grateful if they are able to see you directly, face by face. All right, so yeah, thank you so much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, before we closing this webinar, I just want to announce that there is a gift from UGM, from Vika, for Pak Ari and Burina for delivering a very good question. So it's not only Damien and Yositaka who got the present from UGM, but also Bu Damien. So Bu Damien, no, Burina.
Burina. Oh, Burina. Oh, yeah.
I call you Bu Damien. Sorry, Burina. All right. Well, thank you so much for all the vice dean and the dean, Ibu Diaweni. There are many here. Yeah, Bapak Jumanto. Yeah, there are many important persons, so it's really our privilege to have you all here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much again for your effort and time, and we will close this webinar, and hopefully we have another webinar soon on the same topic, but we're looking forward for the new solution and also maybe more sharing for the dean and also the vice dean of academic. And Professor Damien and Professor Yositaka will be the judge to see whether the implementation of this program in Indonesia will be running smoothly. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Keep safe and healthy, and thank you so much for today. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Damien. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yoshi.
Look after
See you
yourself.
next time.